For the longest time, there were three main colors you would find in watches. Black, white or silver, usually on dials especially, and then blue if you wanted to add a little bit of fun or color to the mix. But these days, a watch brand is selling itself short if they're not offering at least one green watch. And that's all thanks to this. Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso, and yes, today we are talking about the Rolex Kermit, officially known as the Submariner date 16610LV. Released to commemorate the anniversary of the Submariner, this was the first really mainstream introduction and hit when it comes to Rolex and green watches. And it set off a reaction that gave us the Hulk and the Starbucks, both of which are still highly sought after to this day for people looking for Submariners. These are the watches that have spawned watches like this, and this. And it's crazy to think that such a small change, adding a shade of color, would have such a massive impact. But that's exactly what the Kermit did. The logic behind it was that since this was an anniversary model, they wanted to use Rolex's signature color to commemorate that. We had already seen things like the Pepsi where they introduced a little bit more color, or even the Bluesy. Those already looked amazing in the aluminum, but this was something that set off the chain reaction that really kicked into high gear when the Hulk came out. But it all started with the Kermit. If you followed me on the channel, you already know that this is my favorite generation of Submariner, but this was something a little bit more than your usual 5-digit sub. It also introduced the maxi dial to the Submariner. Now, we had seen this previously on the Yachtmaster, these bigger hands, bigger indices, but on the Submariner they were still using the original dial. So this was very much a transition between the 5-digit Submariner that had been running since 1988 to the soon-to-be released 6-digit Submariners that would redefine the look and feel for the Submariner in the same way that the 5-digit Submariner did for the 20+ years before it was discontinued. On the inside, it featured the Calibre 3135, Rolex's workhorse movement, and this would also carry on to the later models. But it was that green bezel, and the fact that because of the aluminum showing different colors depending on how the light hit it, depending on how it was manufactured, depending on how they shaped the fore, it spawned a huge collector community following this because it was so alien for Rolex to introduce color onto something like the Submariner. It's as if they introduced a different color to something like the Explorer. A lot of Rolex's tool watches, people are always used to them being just black and white, so when they introduce color to them, it just shakes things up and makes them that much more interesting. It means that the watch is more than just a tool, it's an expression of personality. And in my opinion at least, this is the best example of the green Submariners, because not only is it the first, but it really exemplifies the great thing about the 5-digit Submariners, because it had a lot of the more modern qualities, including that maxi dial, but it still had the older metal bezel, it still had the older case which was much sleeker. There's just so much to love about it. It represents a previous generation as much as the current one. And it was really the end of an era because only a couple years after this was introduced, they replaced the entire line completely. And when you compare it to how long the Hulk lasted, which was 10 years, this had a comparatively shorter life, and that makes it that much more uncommon because they simply made it for less time. So that's just a quick overview of, in my view, one of the most influential watches, and one that maybe goes perhaps a little bit under the radar compared to the Hulk, which is maybe the poster child for introducing green watches. But really it was Rolex doing that with the bezel first that led them to eventually introduce that on the dial and the bezel so that they could one-up themselves. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the Rolex Kermit? Do you think that the Kermit was the turning point for the industry that eventually led to this huge amount of green watches and green dials that we see on the market today? Or is there another watch that was more influential? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Of course, if you like this video, then make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures of watches, you can follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. If you want to see more videos of watches, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes out. And if you want to see more Rolex content, don't forget to check out my Rolex playlist. But thank you for joining me on this quick overview of one of the most influential watches in the industry, the Rolex Submariner Kermit.